Gentlemen, if we could take our seats or find them, we'll get started directly. Thank you for coming tonight. I didn't see you sneak in. It's good to see you. Happy New Year to you all. I'm going to wait till you all get comfortably seated, because then I'm going to ask you to stand up, please. As is our custom, we'll begin our meeting with a pledge of allegiance and an invocation. And who's coming up to help me with the pledge? Because heaven knows I need a lot of help. There you go.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you please remain standing and pray with me? Heavenly Father, it is a privilege and an honor to come into your presence tonight and ask you to be here with us and to lead and guide our meeting. Be with our speaker in what his heart to what you'd have him say. We just pray for our country tonight and all the problems that we're facing, but we know that you're greater than our problems, and we just look to you for solutions, for help, and for comfort and direction. And just be with our service people, Lord, serving at home and abroad, and our deputies at the border, Lord, just be with them. We just thank you for your goodness and for your great love for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
And you can be seated. So I hope everybody had a great holiday. We're into our first meeting of the new year. Thank you for coming. You know, it's always scary the first meeting of the year because we don't know whether we're going to have 3 people show up or 30 people or more, and so it's great to have you here. Let me start out to remind you or introduce our board. For those of you who are infrequent or are new tonight. Who is new tonight, by the way? Anybody fresh here new? We have 2 people. Great, thank you. Hold on. Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us where you are and who you are.
Hello, my name is Sharon McDowell. I've been here in Bremerton for about 3 years, and prior to that I lived in Milton Fruit River, Oregon, where I attended the Tea Party meetings there. Yeah.
I came out of Walla Walla for a while, so yeah, thank you. Give Sharon a hand for coming. Would you like to say hi?
Hi, my name's Alice. My husband
So apparently, should we have a quick vote? Should I give the mic to her husband to clarify this invitation? Or should we let her have a pass? We're giving her a pass. Okay, thank you for coming out. So I was getting started. Oh, the board. Chuck DaCosta, our treasurer, and we're looking for his apprentice so we can, he's been doing this, what, 3 years now? 3 years. And so we're looking for somebody to cross-train as our treasurer and take over the job full-time, earnestly doing that. Chuck DaCosta, give him a round. Hey. You can't get away with that. Okay. She's been with Kitsap Pattiots Tea Party from the very beginning, has earned some awards with us and is just as solid as a rock, a good helper, and we're very privileged to have her on the board. So one of our newer members of the board, but I think this is what, 2nd or 3rd year, is Joyce Feast. She's the one that likes to talk.
Welcome tonight, the Tea Party.
You can tell we sometimes we have to get, a little pry bar out there. But once she gets talking about educational stuff, it's like she's got a wealth of information and a very deep well of knowledge. So I'm not missing people. I'm going to run back here to another long time. So you'll have to crane your head a little bit. But this is Sandy Dahlquist.
Oh.
And she's been our secretary for how long?
Forever.
Forever, okay.
Not only am I the secretary, but I'm the queen of bling. We have our red, white, and blue bling back here. It's all on half price until it's gone. And then we will no longer be doing this. So if you're interested in some red, white, and blue bling, Valentine's Day, guys, is coming up next month, and we won't have a meeting again before that, hint, hint. So bling is back here on the table, half price.
So another one of our board members over here is a man of 2 words. And we always tease him because he always talks so much. So why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Dana Cruz. Thanks for being here.
There you go.
See?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And I think you are our newest board member, aren't you? You and Faye.
I'll be a choice. My name is Nick Baird. I'm the new vice president, so I'm happy to be here for you guys. And if anybody wants to introduce yourself to me, give me any ideas about how we can make this better, just feel free to go up and say hi. Thanks.
So unless I miss somebody, did I miss anybody? That's our board of directors, our volunteer board of directors. Please give them a round of thanks. And lastly, somebody that you've seen, well not lastly, we've got several volunteers, but it's always fun to introduce the ambassador of fun, Miss Kelly Sutherland. Would you please stand up? She ensures that we've got a little bit of fun. So, and that would be a good segue to the first announcement tonight. Do any of you remember that thing that happened last year? It was in June. It was this kind of very casual get-together in Gig Harbor. Do you remember what that might have been? The Olympic Conference. Do you remember? How many of you went to the Olympic Conference and had a great time? Okay. So the purpose of this introduction tonight is you haven't heard anything about it because our election season was a little raucous and people were a little bit busy, but we will have an Olympic conference this year, and I'm just going to introduce you to the leadership team as it stands today, right? And they'll have a few words to say, and they'll solicit volunteers, but I want you to know who's going to make this miracle thing just absolutely be better than last year. So, first up, our treasurer, Miss Chris Stevens, Mrs. Chris Stevens. Please come up. And then we have Kelly Sutherland. Well, I guess you just brought them all up at once. You kind of took away my whole build-up there, right? So she's the only one who gets to have fun. I didn't get it approved. And then, but the surprise tonight, at least I'm hoping you'll think it is a great surprise, is we've been able to get the skills and talent of Jenny Young to join us for ops. Now, is that a great team or what? Now, we haven't a lot of details, almost no details to give you tonight because planning has just begun in earnest, but I wanted you to see their faces, know who to talk to, and I want to give them just a moment to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. I'd just like to give you an update on some of the formation things that we've been doing for the Olympic Conference. The Olympic Conference is now registered with the Secretary of State as a nonprofit organization. This also means that there will be no PDC reporting. That means when you attend the conference, you won't have to fill out an envelope with your name, rank, and serial number, and all that stuff, because we're an educational entity. We now have a UBI number and a business license. The bylaws have been written and adopted. A bank account has been established. Operating forms have been created, and so we are well on our way, and we're ready to take off.
So you all remember last year how many times I got up and spoke to you about the Olympic Conference and how fun it was going to be, and many of you attended, many of you did presentations. We have a very nice leadership team this year. As you can tell, we're estrogen dominant. Poor John. We could use a fellow or two to come and join the volunteer team. So if any of you have some skills that you'd like to lend us, that would be great. So we will bring the details to you as they unfold with us. And as we do our planning, I just want you to know that we're going to do a very similar format this year as last. We'll have speakers and workshops and panelists, and we'll have some social activities, we'll have networking and some fun.
Okay, well, and I'm Jenny Young, and I'm just so excited to be here, and it's I'm thrilled to be invited to join this wonderful team. I've been impressed with their organization and just a wealth of information that they have on the planning and everything that they've poured into it so far has been really impressive. So I'm confident that this is going to be a really great weekend, full of a lot of great information. So thankful to be a part of this team.
Now, one of the great things, by the way, is that since now that you know we have a bank account, so if you, there's two ways you can donate. One that you can donate to the Kitsap Pattiots Tea Party, right? Which is a political organization, and this is how we pay the rent here and do our activities. So we really appreciate you doing that and fill out the form for that. If you want to donate to the Olympic Conference, right? It's not a political organization. You can actually just put money in an envelope, and we will use it wisely. At least that's the plan. And in rebuttal to the estrogen moment that we just listened to, you know, when I was growing up in law enforcement and in the military and in corporate, there was always a common theme to my success, humble as it was, is that you surround yourself by people that are smarter than you. And so I think I've succeeded in doing that. And you know what? They're all just happen to be great women. So maybe that's a little bit of a challenge to some of you out there. But there's not going to be any of this. What's the political argument about that today? I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's not a little boys club. That's right. That's good. And if they weren't competent and if they weren't capable and they weren't as good as they are, then I wouldn't have introduced them to you tonight. So you can count on a good Olympic Conference. Are there any other introductions of note that I should make tonight before we get into our 2-minute mic? Okay, so for those of you who are new, we have 2-minute mic time where you come up, stand up with the mic. You can say what you want for 2 minutes as long as it's respectful. And if anybody wants to do that, you just line up right over here. Does anybody want to do that tonight? Come on, it's the new year. And Governor Inslee is running a budget. Come on. Nobody wants to say anything about that? Okay, Marcus took it up. He's coming. He's coming. Okay. No disappointment.
One of the things I love about the Tea Party is it's not a good old boys club or a women's club. We're fighting what the other side's doing, and that's this us versus them mentality. There shouldn't be any of that. We're Americans. We're patriots, those that love our country and what we do, and that's part of the reason I keep coming back, because that's what this organization stands for. I did want to bring up the fact that the Kitsap Rifle Revolver Club has submitted once again all of its paperwork as required, requested by the county, etc. And so it's in their hands as far as whether or not they're going to approve or permit and allow us by their standards to get back operational. There's a lot of things going on that behind the scenes that unfortunately a lot of folks don't realize or understand. But several of you do that have inquired to actually find out what's going on. So we're looking forward to seeing what their next response will be, and we'll keep it posted. One of the things that is just so evident every time we go, every time you turn on the news, and one of the hardest things we're battling, folks, today is weed. Down in Olympia, there was testimony taken today on several firearms issues, related issues, and of course the media shows, you know, some very attractive people and the state AG that are making arguments about why high-capacity magazines should be banned, and then they focus in on the pro-gun side, which were just a couple of old bubbas that just, it was purposeful, there's no question about it. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what we're fighting. Part of the reason we were able to get 1639 through and all of these initiatives that they're gaining steam on is because we're fighting the media. And it's not enough just to make your post on Facebook. That's important, but folks, we need to be knocking on doors. We need to be talking to people directly and informing them as to what the issues really are. Because the old adage used to be, it's hard to fight the gentleman that buys ink by the barrel. You know, today it's airtime by the bite. However it comes across, it is tough. Many of you know that and have seen that. So again, I encourage you to get out and personally make contact with your friends, your family. This is a big issue. This is a big issue. My youngest daughter came to me and said, "Dad, why do you stay in the fight?" I said, "Because you matter. Because my grandchildren matter. And it's our watch. It's my watch. And we have to do what we can to try to turn this train in Washington around." I really believe we can do that. When you actually talk and take that time to reason with people, it's amazing. The lights come on. But we have to take the time to do that. Anyway, keep posted on what's happening with Kitsap Rifle Revolver Club, and again, thank you for what
Marcus, Luke, how does the NRA and Second Amendment really for us?
I hate to say this, but it seems to me that the National Rifle Association, which I'm a life member of, I feel about them like I do my country. They had a great foundation, they've got some great principles and issues involved, but if they don't get some things squared away here shortly, it's going to be devastating. They have not been able to help the gun club. They wrote an amicus brief. The NRA probably spent $50,000 on Kitsap Rifle Revolver Club. You know, not one dime of that came into the state. They went to attorney firms in Los Angeles, Connecticut, and other places. We never saw any of it. Not a single one of those attorneys or a private investigator would step foot in the state. So Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep Bear Arms, Second Amendment Foundation, all of these groups, I firmly have come to the belief that they have figured out that there's millions of dollars to be made on the fears of gun owners. And we're not seeing much of that. So you want to make an effect here, don't count on the NRA, except in that I'm the NRA. So I try to speak up and talk to my, the people that represent me back in Virginia at NRA headquarters, but it's not enough. We have to do something here, and we have to do it now. We're losing all of our ranges right now. It's really quick. So again, we need everybody here to get personally involved.
Give Marcus a hand. Now, just as a reminder on how we do a 2-minute mic. 2-minute mic is for a 2-minute message, right? But I will allow that we have an upcoming speaker that we're vetting out that will talk on gun issues probably next month, and so that will be a very good and timely discussion. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name's Alan Jackson. I was born in England. I lived in Australia, South Africa, lots of other countries. Been in the States over 20 years now. I've spent 10 years now in California, and I've been up here in Kitsap County. Retired. I'm a little bit older than most people tell me I look. I was actually born at the end of the Second World War, so You can work that out. Kidding me. But anyway, what I want to say is I agree totally with our NRA representative there. And the biggest thing in my mind, I picked up the newspaper in the hotel lobby. GOP Senator gauges Trump's value. Another weak, wimpish, yellow-livered GOP senator who's trying to appeal to all the wrong kind of people. What we need to be doing is being proud of Donald Trump. What Donald Trump is saying is the toughest and best advice America needs right now. If we waver and give in to these morons, and they are morons, that are slicing at us like hyena on a dying giraffe, we've got a major problem. We really do need to stand up, speak up, smile with confidence, and tell these people that are absolute a-holes what we really do think of them. Now, there's letters in this paper, and there's only a couple that touch on the problem at the border. There's letters in this paper, which I've got to tell you, most of the papers in Kitsap County are Canadian, and we know what Trudeau's doing. Okay? They've all got their finger in the Washington cash pot. They're milking the Washingtonians, us people here, to support their lily-livered liberal ways. And we have to attack them when we can. We have to be firm, we have to be fair, we have to be polite, but we really need to get our damn message out. Every one of you's got kids. Every one of you's probably got grandkids. Educate your kids as to what's going on. Most kids are being educated in completely the wrong way. They're not getting history. They're being indoctrinated into supporting an absolute death cult called the Democratic Party. So, do your thing. Letters everywhere, and educate your kids.
How many of you have been following the news story on the Catholic school board? I love it when the media implodes after a bad one. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Gail Racy, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight. And I just wanted to let people know how easy it is to report on bills and legislation and find out what's kind of going on in Olympia. And it doesn't take but 10 or 15 minutes of your time. And so one of those is, you know, if you join an organization like the Tea Party and they maybe send out things, or other groups that you belong to will send out, they'll vet some bills for you, and then all you got to do is go to the Washington website, and then you got to click on the bill. You can read the whole bill, you can read parts of it, but it's just a piece of cake to go call a 1-800 number and say, I'm for or against. You don't have to tell them your district, you don't have to know your representatives. Piece of cake. They have great volunteers that answer the phone line, take your information, they send it to your 3 representatives. You can list as many bills as you want. I've had them have to stop and start again for me because I've had so many of them, but I just want to encourage people to do it. And it takes about 10 minutes, if that, to voice your opinion. The grassroots stuff works. So we're not going to change anything if we don't put our boots on, our working boots, our hiking boots, or whatever boots you want to wear, or your high heels, and just get to work and let our legislators know how we feel. Thank you.
We open the floodgates. Come up here, man.
Yeah, you got trouble. Yeah.
Hi folks, my name is Charlie. I've been a resident of Kitsap County since '92 and lived in Washington State for about 30 years now. Government has one function, and that function is to protect the rights of the individual. That principle is enshrined in the Declaration of Independence and numerous other documents dating back to the compact before. We're looking at 2 diametrically opposed views of government right now. One view is that the government is be all and end all. Nothing outside of the state. The other one is the view that is, again, enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, that the only purpose of government is to defend the right of the individual. Groups don't have rights, only individuals have rights. And quite frankly, we're losing. We're losing badly. We're losing badly because we're not organized. We're being opposed by groups of people with, like I said, diametrically opposed values, and those people are organized. They have seminars on how to lobby their legislature. There's a group that's going to be meeting with Derek Kilmer's staff at the end of the month to boost this green initiative that everybody's talking about, which is basically socialism on steroids. It's take over every possible industry in the United States, from food production, energy production. And I look around and I look at the state Republican Party. Sorry, Drew, I'm not going to beat up on you. You're my rep. I kind of like it. But when you see things like the State Address, we had Governor Inslee standing up there. We had one representative, I believe his name was Walsh from the Aberdeen area, that wore a yellow vest to that. Now, can you imagine the impact that the entire Republican caucus had worn yellow vests to that? At least the media would have asked a question. Why are you wearing yellow vests? Because we're about to take it in the shorts, gang. The one and only thing that people around here are really going to understand is their pocketbook. You talk to them, you're blue in the face about your rights and your liberties. A group like this might understand it. Most people don't care anymore. The gentleman spoke a little bit ago, was talking about educating our children. That's exactly right. We've lost that fight. We haven't lost that fight completely, but we are losing that fight. So again, as Marcus said to start with, talk to people. Don't be afraid. Get up and say something. Lobby your legislatures. I spent quite a bit of time last night sending emails to everybody on the state House Judiciary Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee on the bills. The group that's opposing gun rights, they're actually opposing the civilian disarmament group that's backed by Bloomberg. Their group buzzed people in and put them up at hotels in India last night. There were about, from what I understand, about 2,000 people that were there to testify today. About half were pro-gun people. They all drove down there on their own, maybe carpool, but they were coming on their own. It was an organized group that brought people in by the busloads. That's what we're fighting, guys. Do we really want to lose this? Do you really want to live at Gulag? Because that's what we're doing.
One of our board members. Come on up, Joyce.
My name is Joyce Feast. Following on his happy note, more happiness, or happiness. It's been said that we're losing the fight. I don't want to say it that way, but we have to fight the media that hates the narrative for us, which isn't correct. But also there's the schools, and they make sure our children have the way of thinking that they want kids to think. So they're using like the school shootings to say that kids are getting bullied, or they're unhappy, or they're depressed. And so we have to have more social emotional learning. And so there's a bill, Senate Bill 5082, to create a social emotional learning committee. It helps students build awareness, manage emotions, set goals, and so forth. Now, it sounds really nice, and it could be, except that it's not going to end up that way. In order to teach social emotional learning and for them to say that they have made such progress, they have to know where they were before and then where they were after. So in other words, they have to do an assessment of where the kids were both pre-test and then a post-test. And what kind of questions are they going to ask related to their social emotional state and their belief system? And so we want, it seems like they would have intrusive surveys, and would the parents have access to this? Would they be asked permission? Would they be able to see the results? Would they be able to see the questions beforehand? So there are all these questions about such intrusive surveys, and then what are they going to do to so-called remediate the children if they don't have the right attitudes? And say if you have, like there was you probably read it in the paper about a little boy who ate his Pop-Tart into the shape of a mountain, which turned out to look like a gun. And he got suspended for aiming it
aiming his Pop-Tart at somebody and shooting. So would that go on his criminal record as a gun offense? And we don't know the answer to these questions. So any kind of social emotional learning bill or course or anything, we should talk to our legislators and impose them. It won't be a period, like math period where you and they have a social emotional period. It would be intertwined with every subject, in the math and the reading and so forth. So it's something to watch out for.
Here comes trouble. Here we go.
I'm Chris Charlemagne, and I'm going to tell you something that may be coming to your neighborhood pretty fast, because it's in my neighborhood. McNeil Island has a lot of sex offenders that are violent, and they have served their time. They don't know what to do with them, so I guess that we need them in Washington. Right across from me, there's 16 acres that now has 4 of these violent sex offenders, and they are planning on having another up to make it up to either 6 or 7. They do not have guards. They have chaperones that have a cell phone. They also can go out into the community as long as they have a chaperone. And at any rate, this is right across the road from us. They say they would not put them in any place that it's like a public school be closed or such as that, or a church or playgrounds. But there are people who live in these homes. And at any rate, our situation is not quite as bad as it is over in Lakewood. In Lakewood, they have a group of the adult family homes, which were intended to be for people who could not just live alone because of maybe a mental problem, maybe a physical problem. And they were having those. Well, all of a sudden, these sex offenders are being put in those homes with them. There's actually been a murder. So at any rate, that is the biggie problem. And I'm going to give you something for you to, not give it to you, but because it's fairly lengthy. Please take this title down, Tipping Point Adult Family Home Businesses in Lakewood. Senator Oban has a bill up, and I like it, Senate Bill 5038. But the problem of it is, it takes the sex offenders out of there, but they can get into another one, as long as it's not with that same thing. And they could actually have a house right next to that one. So at any rate, it's complicated, and things seems to be changing left and right, but they are planning on having more of them in Kitsap County. And I've talked to the detective. He says so far they have not been putting the sex offenders in with those who are very vulnerable like this, one that got killed. So please take note of that and read it. I didn't write it, but it's very thorough in what it says, and it'll scare you half to death. And this is clear across the state.
Thank you. And if you have any questions, please contact her after the meeting. I'm sure she'll share the material. I know that there's a Facebook site, Washington Public Safety Group or something like that, that is focused on this particular issue. What is it? Washington State for Public Safety. So go to that Facebook page, and I'm sure you'll get some contacts or get some answers there as well. All right. So now we are ready for the big event. And yes, we like him too, right? Claire, out of the 35th District, drive all the way here from, I think, Union. Probably came out of Olympia tonight, right? Give a nice warm welcome to the Assistant Floor Leader, Representative Drew MacEwen.
Well, thanks for having me here tonight. Appreciate it. So Yeah, we actually do meet in session regardless of whether it's a federal holiday or not. So been going since very early this morning and came up here directly from the Capitol and just appreciate the opportunity to be with you. Some of you I've known for a long time. Marcus, I volunteered on his county commissioner campaign, was it 96? When I was in the Navy, that's what brought me out here from the Midwest. And a lot of you have known since I was first elected in 2012. And a couple of things, I'll tell you a little bit about what this floor leader thing is and what's going on in the House, and then talk about some budget stuff and take your questions. So real quick, so yes, I'm what's called the assistant floor leader. We have a leadership team, every caucus does, on the Republican and Democrat side in both the House and the Senate, and you kind of steer the ship of your caucus. So the floor leaders, there's 3 of us, we're responsible for making sure that we properly get our debate framed. Every member is entitled to talk. You can't tell somebody not to, etc. But on major issues, we try to make sure that we're covering all of our points. And I was elected to that at the end of last session, and then re-elected at our reorganization after the election this past November. J.T. Wilcox is our Republican leader. He's from the Yelm area. Joel Kretz is the deputy leader. He has been for a long time. He's out of Okanagan County. And then Jacqueline Maycumber is the floor leader, and she's out of Okanagan as well. And then there's myself and Morgan Irwin, our assistant floor leaders. And then we have Dan Griffey, my seatmate, is our whip. And who am I missing? Paul Harris, who's down in Vancouver, is our caucus chair. So that's the leadership team of the Republican House caucus. But on the floor leader side, again, here's the reality. As our caucus attorney always says when we come up with these great ideas, why don't we do this to them? Well, this is math. 57 is greater than 41. And that's the number in the House right now. The Democrat side is 57. When I was elected in 2012, I was the 43rd member in the House Republicans. We got up to 48, and now we're at 41. And that is the reality of it. And so, when you're in the minority, you got to be fluent in the rules, the parliamentary rules, the rules of the chamber, because it's the only way that we can ensure that the right of the voice of the minority to be heard. And so, as we go into this session, this is the lowest number that I've served in. It creates some challenges because we can't stop things. That they can run whatever they want to do. But one thing that we've got is the bond vote, and so on the capital budget, we fund that. The capital budget's infrastructure. It's not the operating budget of the state. So this is what builds our educational buildings at the higher education level. Does a lot of community projects. We fund that through bonding, and to bond our state, we also do transportation bonds. That's a separate budget. You need 2/3 vote in both chambers. So we still have enough votes that we can block the bond. That's the only leverage we have right now. So that is one item that we have. If there is a major piece of legislation, we use that. If you'll recall the Hearst issue last year, that's actually carried over from the previous year, and that was regarding the rights of your water rights on your own land and being able to drill a well. The only reason we were able to get the Hearst issue solved is because we could block the bond vote, and we refused to let the capital budget advance unless we got the Hearst fix done. And so we were able to do that. Once we got that done, we don't trust the governor's word not because he's a Democrat, but because he has broken promises to us before, so we refused to allow that bond vote to happen until he actually signed the bill for the Hearst fix. And once that was done, we then moved the bond vote forward. So that's the only leverage we have right now. So what else can we do? And this is where it's key as a floor leader. And we're not going to be able to do this on every issue because they're going to, our ideology is vastly different from the majority party. But on things where we can give them pause and make our speeches on the floor be powerful enough that it gives them pause that, boy, if we enact this, this will not be politically popular for us. And we've done that before, and right now that is the only other avenue that we have in the House is to make that argument strong enough that, go ahead, you can pass this, we know that, but here are the consequences, here will happen. And here's something that's going to scare you, and this might be a little inside baseball and some stuff, I don't know, I mean, obviously we're more in tune with our side of the aisle, right? But give you an idea how the House Democrat caucus is right now. Frank Chopp, longest serving speaker. He's been in there since 98, 97. Did a shared speakership with Clyde Ballard when the Republicans and the Democrats were tied. He's a very, very sharp individual. He knows how to maintain political control. He also represents Fremont in Seattle, where Shana Sawant is from. Gives you an idea of those demographics, right? Frank Chop is probably the most conservative member of that caucus right now. This past election, who they elected, it's unbelievable. And Frank is stepping down after this session. At the end of this session, as speaker, he'll fill out his term. Because the writing's on the wall, and the hard left progressive side of the House Democrat caucus is hungry. And he's been able to maintain control long enough, and it's kind of like winning your last Super Bowl as a quarterback, and you retire because you know you're probably not going to be able to get there again. That's where Frank Chop is at. And so he's going to take this session, and that's actually good for us because he is more pragmatic. Who comes next is going to be of a big concern. And there's a few people vying for it, and I'm not terribly thrilled with any one of them. So those are going to create some challenges next year. Thank God next year is a short session. This is 105 days this year, next year is 60 days, so, and then we go into the election cycle again. So those are some of the realities in the House, so as some of you email me and say, what about this bill? Just remember, 57 is greater than 41. We're with you, but we have limits. And keep in mind, so we started a week ago today, and I read the introduction sheet today, and I can't remember what the last bill number was. I want to say it was 14 something. And we started Bill 1000 as the first bill introduced in session. So we have roughly 450 bills introduced. So if you just give me a bill number, odds are high I'm not going to know what it is. I know what my own bills are, those that are before my committee. I'm the ranking member on Commerce and Gaming, which oversees the Liquor Control Board and all things gambling related and some commerce issues. So I'm very familiar with the bills that come before that committee. Ranking member sounds like a great title. You'd rather be chair. When you're in the minority party, you're a ranking member. So that's where we're at. So if we were in the majority, I would be the chairman of that committee. And then I'm the assistant ranking on appropriations, which is our budget writing committee for the operating budget. So, but real quick, Johnny asked me to talk about the budget. So, and the yellow vest. Let me comment on that real quick because we were actually talking about that prior to the State of the State address. Like, that would be an awesome idea to do. And this goes back to having the rules of the chamber and respect for the chamber. And because you always remember, 57 is greater than 41, so what we do can come back around on us pretty hard. And so the rules are there to protect the minority, but they can also be used against the minority. And so, yeah, Jim Wallace, who represents Grays Harbor and Pacific County in Wakiakum, he wore the yellow vest knowing the governor was going to get him.
Some may want to know what the yellow vest.
That's where I was going. The yellow vest, when France rioted a couple months ago over the carbon tax, they were wearing yellow vest, and so it's come to symbolize being against these massive environmental taxes on us. And so Jim wore it onto the House floor before we gaveled in, and dang it, Jim's a smart guy. He's one step ahead of us as a caucus, and thought it was a great idea. Well, the chief clerk, who works for the speaker, raised the issue right away. Crap, you cannot have a prop on the House floor. We can't have them in committees either. And that's actually considered a prop. So Jim, being the smart guy, he just took it off and hung it over to his chair, so it still was there. But it was a good idea, but that was the story on that. And then one other quick anecdote on the State of the State address. So I've sat through, I was elected in the same year as the governor in 2012, so I've sat through all of his State of the State addresses. And he's usually used them to put forward his legislative agenda on what he wants to have accomplished in the coming year. This year was a marked difference from it. He did a little bit of that, but he clearly had positioned himself for the national stage and was championing, in what in his view, everything that's been right with his administration over the last 6 years. And so, he's actually in New Hampshire today and tomorrow, kicking that deal off. So, when we have the State of the State address, it's a joint session, so the Senate comes in the House chamber and joins us. The Speaker, it's a voice vote, just makes the motion that, to convene a joint session, to hear the Governor's State of the State address. All in favor say aye, and not many people vote, and then all in favor say no. And I've done this 2 years in a row now, and I yelled no loud enough, the Speaker heard it, and he he's got a sense of humor. He just looked at me and laughed. You got me on that one. So I got the no vote in on against the governor, giving us the state address, but it's just a little bit of fun on there. So budget-wise, the way the process works, the governor, under our state law, the governor has introduced two budgets, a book one and a book two. And he does this in December of each year. A book one budget is based on current law, current tax law, current revenue law, fee law, and everything. And he has to give us a budget, give the legislature a budget proposal based on those things. And nobody puts any credence into it because it's not where he wants to go, but he's required to do that. So that's done. You make adjustments based on what's called caseload forecast. So, you know, what we're seeing on cases in social services, et cetera, and you know, so you make adjustments with that. And that budget gets submitted and nobody pays attention to it. And then you have the book two budget, which is really his budget proposal. And he can do whatever he wants in that. He can assume that any tax increase or fee increase that he wants will be implemented. So it is his Santa Claus budget, and he buys everything with it. And so when that was released in December, it increased spending 25% overall. And here's the kicker. So again, I was elected the same year as the governor in 2012. When we took office, the state budget was $34 billion. The one we passed last year is $51 billion. That's a 50% increase in 6 years, $17 billion. And it wasn't because we passed taxes. It was because of the strength of this economy and the growth that we've had in this state and the resilience of Washington State overall. But yet every year, he always proposes tax increases. You know, we just need $2-3 more billion. We just need $2-3 more billion. You've gotten $17 billion, and it's not enough. Record revenue. The audacity last year of the majority party was to pass a budget. We have there's a mathematical equation for it. It gets a little complicated, but basically when we have what's called extraordinary revenue, so when we have revenue that's above what our projections are, that's done by a nonpartisan group called the Economic Forecast Council. And when we have extraordinary revenue, that gets peeled off. We don't get to spend it. It goes into the rainy day fund. So when you have the inevitable economic downturn, we're able to weather the storm. It's a very good budgeting tool. And to raid the rainy day fund, you need 2/3 vote in most instances. So what the Democrats did last year in the budget process was they took because they weren't going to get a 2/3 vote. There was no way. So what they did is they took the money before it got to the rainy day fund and claimed that by doing that, they don't need 2/3 vote because they never took it out of the rainy day fund. They diverted it prior to. And give them credit. It ended up passing the legal test, even though I disagree with it, but it sure as hell does not pass the smell test, does it? I mean, but that's what's going on down there. They have an insatiable quest to spend the money, and they still use the argument, well, we're still, you know, at pre-recession levels. No, we're not. We're not even close. Not even close. And so, you know, the governor's proposal this year, again, 25% increase in overall spending, and the largest tax increase he's ever proposed. Never mind that in 2012 and in 2016 he campaigned that you would not raise your taxes. We don't need to do that. And yet here we are, his largest tax increase ever, $10.4 billion over the next 4 years. $10.4 billion. That's a 20% increase in taxes on you. And some of it's to save the orcas in theory, but a lot of it is for his party's pet projects. And so that is what we're up against. You know, they have full control of the House, as I said. They have a 5-seat majority in the Senate. It's going to be tough. But, you know, it's a two-edged sword. The challenge for people like Frank Chop, who are more pragmatic, is going to be to control their members. Because if they go and they take that hard turn left, you're going to feel it before the next election. And he knows that. Frank Chop knows that. He's a smart politician. I don't want us to have that kind of spending level, but on the flip side, I guess that's the only satisfaction I have is that if that happens, it makes our job next year slightly easier, but I really don't want to go down that path. I'd rather fight hard in the campaign and have a reasonable budget to deal with. But that is the story there. real quick, and so I'd really like to take your questions. But on the whole budget process, there's 3 budgets in the state. The operating budget, which is that main one, the $51 billion. We have a transportation budget, which is funded through gas taxes, registration fees, et cetera. That can be bonded to build out infrastructure. And then we have the capital budget, which again is to build non-transportation infrastructure. So those 3 budgets, with 2 of them being bondable, we're required to have a balanced budget on our operating budget. And then obviously we carry debt for the capital budget and the transportation, much like most households will have a mortgage and most people will finance a car. You kind of look at it in the same way. And you maintain a balanced budget of your regular take-home pay. So kind of similar in how the state works, but we have a constitutional debt limit where, and thank God the voters passed this in 2012 to amend the Constitution. We used to have a 9% threshold for debt coverage. So 9% of the average revenue over 6 years was the maximum amount that could be spent on debt service for our state. And again, thanks to you, we've lowered that, and so it's incremental. It's now down at 8.25%, and then by 2034, it's at 8%, which I know that sounds like a long time to get to there, but 0.25% on billions of dollars is a lot, and you have to account for the bonds that are maturing, so it's a long time frame to bring that all up to speed, but we're lowering that down, and right now, our debt service is about 5%, so we're doing pretty well, as long as we can stay and have enough votes to be able to block a bond vote, I think we can keep things fairly reasonable. So 5% of our operating budget goes to debt service for principal and interest. We pay an average interest rate of about 4% on our bonds that are outstanding. But here's where it's gonna freak you out a little. Anybody guess what our total outstanding debt is? Take a stab. No, I wish. $19.8 billion is our current outstanding debt for the state of Washington. And again, our debt service coverage, so what we're paying on principal and interest, is at 5% of our operating budget. So we're within our means, but when you look at it in that context, $19.8 billion, it's a lot of money. And our state treasurer, who thankfully you elected in 2016, first Republican in a long time to have a treasurer's office, Dwayne Davidson, very practical guy. He's doing a wonderful job, really driving home the message that we've got to continue to pay down these bonds. We're going into a rising interest rate market right now. We don't want to be putting out more. We want to be paying down. And combine that with our state pension programs. And we're one of the better states, I will say that. We're not in Illinois, which is a complete mess. Kentucky's a complete mess. Washington overall is fairly good with its pension plan, but yet we are underfunded. We have enough to meet our demands, but if you project it out, if we have a significant drop in the market, which will happen someday, again, if we saw lowering of contribution levels, that could become problematic. And so last year with this extraordinary revenue, the treasurer made a hard case. Let's pay down some of our pension liabilities, because a dollar going in there today, earning interest, having market returns, is going to compound much more and have a much more positive impact for us long term than if we just defer it. Well, we've deferred that, and obviously that works in both directions. So yeah, the pension liability is out there, and that's an unfortunate case, but it's something that we need to be conscientious of. But the majority party doesn't view it as an issue right now. I'd like to address things before they really are an issue. They just don't hold that viewpoint. So that's a couple of high-level views on our overall budget process. Again, I'm the assistant ranking on appropriations, so we do budget meetings 2-3 times a day. I skipped one tonight to come here and just put it on the speakerphone. But we do these first week and a half. It's all superfluous. I mean, it's agency X, they're spending blah blah blah. We don't get into the nitty-gritty for a little while. And what'll happen, so the House the House is the lead chamber this year on the budget. The Democrats will slice and dice the governor's budget, and I think their target date is March 5th, where they will release their budget proposal, and that'll be the real budget proposal. They won't even go as far as Governor Inslee, but they're sure going to try. But March 5th will be when they release what will really be the working document on that. So with that, be happy to take any questions on Seeing none, no, just kidding. Yes, sir. We'll pass the mic around, sorry, hang on one sec, so everybody can hear you.
You mentioned the governor is on the East Coast. Has he made his trip south to California to talk to Moonbeam yet and come up with his stupid ideas?
They usually come up here. Jerry Brown was up here the other day, the former California governor, and then Inslee's big funder is, I forget if it's Tom or Tim, but Stayer, who's out of the Bay Area. That's his big funder, he's a billionaire. And, but I know the governor is hitting the presidential trail. I'm encouraging it. I mean, more he's out of the state, great. He's running for president to be vice president. I mean, or EPA administrator, God forbid, but or Secretary of Energy. So.
Where in this fabulous budget is the affordable housing and the homelessness taken care of? I mean, the compassionate Democrats should be right on top of this.
Yeah, that's a heartburn. I mean, you look at I was on this affordable housing panel down in Alderbrook before session started, and it was, what can we do to address it, et cetera. And it was a good thing, but one of the questions from the moderator was, what can you do in your role in government to, make housing more affordable? And I said, well, I think the premise of the question is wrong. What have we done to make it more expensive? Let's start fixing that. Yeah, GMA is a big part of it. And, so what has been typically done, when we have big problems in the state, we think we just throw money at it, it's gonna magically take care of itself. And I forget off the top of my head, since I've been in office, how much we put into, quote, affordable housing. It's astronomical, and it has done nothing for the price of housing. And again, I don't remember the statistic exactly, so don't quote me on this, but it illustrates the point. In the King County metro area over the last decade, it's something like for every 100 people that have moved there, there's been 10 homes built. Well, that's just economics. I mean, that's not gonna work. And the GMA's, hampered growth. I can think of in Mason County, an 80-acre tract that's for sale for $1 million, but you can't zone it down to less than R5. That doesn't make things affordable. If you could take that to R1, which means you could have one home on each acre, right now it's R20, which means you can have one home on 20 acres. When you make land cost prohibitive, the housing's cost prohibitive.
You take it off the market because you come up with this stupid idea of urban growth areas.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to compact the whole housing. We're working with the county, CAPO is working with the county commission, Bull. And the biggest increases have been taxes and permitting.
Right.
In 1940, a house could be built, stick built, for $60,000. You take that same house today, and you can build it for $80,000, $90,000. Then you add on all of the permitting, processing, and permits and qualifications, and it pulls it out of the socks.
Yeah, I got a good friend of mine's a contractor. He does a lot of work in Olympia. Before you even put a shovel in the ground in Olympia, you're looking at $30,000 to $40,000 in permit fees. Why is it not affordable? Yeah, let's start there. Yes, sir.
Yes, you mentioned that we're coming into a rising interest rate environment. So I'm wondering, doesn't that adversely impact the U.S. Government treasury securities that the pension funds are holding? And so is anybody looking at that?
Well, certainly those rates are going to go up, and I'm not sure if I'm totally following you. I mean, our current outstanding bonds, those are fixed rates. Those aren't going to go up, but as we take on new projects, refinance something, we're getting locked into now higher rates. So that has an impact on it. It's actually a positive from the pension standpoint to have higher interest rates, but you have to be making sure you meet your contribution levels, which we haven't done that great of a job at. So,
no, I'm referring to the assets that are in the pension trust funds.
Those are invested in multiple things all over the world. I mean, I forget what our total investment board. I just saw this the other day, and off the top of my head, I can't recall what it is, but the rise in interest rates is good from an investment standpoint. That's a positive. Because you're earning more money on your invested assets. We have with pensions, you have you establish through, it depends on a state, but or on the company that's doing a pension, but you establish what your target rate of return is, and you either are hitting that or you're going above it or below it. And I believe for the state of Washington, our target rate of return is, I think, 6 or 7%, and it's actually done significantly better than that. So the rising interest rate market will actually help on the investment side. It will help us on the debt side, though. Is that?
I'll maybe chat with you briefly at the end.
Sure.
Okay.
That's kind of a two-parter, Drew. It's a little bit of unrelated questions. First of all, there's one person in the state that is more than anyone else responsible for driving up the healthcare costs, and that's Mike Kryler.
Yes.
I'm glad you're good. So my question on that is, and I have a second part of the question. On Kryler, what can be done to either restrain him or to restrain the Office of Insurance Commissioner? And the second question is a little bit more complicated. I believe we're coming up on a redistricting, and how in the heck is that going to, do you have any clue on how that would impact the members? So those are my two questions.
Sure. So what can we do about Kryler? Well, you can vote for somebody else, and we can. So our state's founding fathers envisioned a weak executive branch. They didn't trust government at all. We have one of the largest executive branches, and you look at statewide elected offices, from the treasurer, the secretary of state, attorney general, lands commissioner, insurance commissioner, auditor, governor, lieutenant governor. I'm probably missing one in there. The executive branch is weak, and there isn't a lot of checks. And it's one of the problems with one-party rule, which we've had in the state now for 30 years, is that never, and it would be the same, let's just be honest, if our side was in control for 30 years, we'd like to think that we'd have everything dialed in. But when you don't have anybody looking over your shoulder, things get out of hand. And it would be the same if we had control for that long. You become complacent, you never try a new idea, you never look at something different. And that's the reality of what's happened in this state. The one-party rule cannot be a check on itself. It just isn't. And so, yeah, this insurance commissioner, he's made it cost prohibitive for companies to be in this state. They choose to leave the state, to drop coverage. And I used to be on the healthcare committee, and it would just tick me off. We'd have these hearings about, there always every year there'd be 2 or 3 counties where they're going into the calendar year, and there's any insurance company that's providing coverage in that county, and oh my gosh, what are we going to do? The insurance commissioner makes some adjustments, and XYZ company would come in to cover them, and then they bring them before the committee and thank him for doing this. It's like, it was you that drove all the other ones out, and so it's frustrating, and it would be great to have a new insurance commissioner. And that's just the reality of it. And it's similar to the email I got earlier today asking me about Tim Ivan's lawsuit from Mrs. Dahlquist. What can we do? Like the new attorney general. In the legislature, we can't. Even if we had control, we couldn't change that. I'm going to get on a high horse here, and I'm not pointing fingers. I'm saying this collectively. As our side of the aisle in this state, it is not enough for us to go to a picnic to have meetings. We have got to do a heck of a lot more if we want to change the direction of the state. That's just reality, folks. That is reality. We have got to do more, and we've got to take it to another level. And that's until we do that. Look at King County. We've lost everything in King County except for the 31st, which just represents a rural sliver of it, and that's by Representative Stokesbury and Morgan Irwin and Senator Phil Fortunato. Those are the only legislative Republicans left in King County. We cannot get to the majority if we don't win in King County. We can't. There's not enough real estate left. So, and to your question, this kind of dives into that. Yeah, redistricting. So the census will happen in 2020. Redistricting actually begins before that because it is a lot of work. So you have some preliminary stuff to work off of. And then the first election that'll reflect the new map will be in 2022. So we have one more election under the current lines, and here's the reality of it. I'm kind of scared about it. I am scared about it because every district that Republicans represent has to grow. When I got elected, represented roughly 135,000 people. I've got to go to 155 based on population today. That's not good because if you look at the 35th district, which is basically from Silverdale going south all of Mason County, and then rural western third of Thurston County down to Rochester. There's not any more population I can pick up. That means I've got to either go north into the 23rd, God forbid, or I've got to take more of Thurston County.
We'll take you to the 23rd. You come on up.
Man, it's a challenge. You got to be ready, Johnny. But that's that. So it's going to be, as looking at that board, it's going to be a challenge for Republicans because we're going to have to. Our districts are going to have to grow into the metro areas, and we have not done as well there. So it's going to be a challenge. There's no way around it. I will say our state does a better job in redistricting. The legislature doesn't do it, thank goodness. It's a commission. Each caucus appoints a member, and then you have a non-voting chair. So you have 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and a non-voting chair. So somebody's got to get it. And it's worked well. It's upheld through court challenges, and both sides end up having to give something. And it's really, I think, it's probably one of the better models in this country when it comes to redistricting. So we're going to have our work cut out for us.
I think it begs the need for the U.S. citizen question.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I've been wondering, since they've been redesigning the GET program, Guaranteed Education Tuition, in the state, if it was unstable and underfunded, and if they redesigned it, was it for the purpose of making it more stable?
Well, leave it to Washington State to come up with a 529 plan, which is an education fund that you can put money in, and for your kids or grandkids to pay for them to go to college. Leave it to Washington State to come up with that program that, when we actually lowered tuition, it screwed up GET. We're the only state that can manage to do that. We lowered tuition and froze it twice, and it screwed up our GET program because it was you bought guaranteed tuition credits. It's kind of like most states. I think we're the only state that does it this way. Most states do it kind of more like what your 401k would be. We kind of set it up like a pension. And so when we lowered tuition, I know this boggles the mind, doesn't make sense, but when we lowered tuition, people ended up having paid more for tuition credits than what they were now worth. And so, yes, we redid GET, and we moved it now to more towards, again, using the retirement analogy, more towards a 401k method. But in order to get Democrats to bite off on it, we had to make people, quote, whole, so that they didn't feel like they lost money. That's the bad side of that legislation. The good side of it is we've gotten more state liability taken away, and that's a positive. So we had to swallow a hard one in making people whole because they chose a program that they wanted the best of both worlds. They want all the assurances, no downside risk, but when things went the right way, we want that too. And we bought that in order to get rid of some of the state liability with it. So it's stable, to answer your question, but it was ugly to get it off of the way we did it.
I've got a closing shot, really. It's depressing listening to you.
Sorry.
It's depressing, and the reason it's depressing is that it's almost like there's an acceptance of being in a swamp. It's what we've been hearing nationally, and yet we've got a guiding light in the formula that is put out by Donald Trump. Now, a lot of people don't like Donald Trump, but whether you like him or not, he's got the country working. He's doing a lot of good things that are stimulating business. Now, you can be in that swamp in Olympia or any other city around the nation. I mean, Seattle's on the doorstep. You've got Olympia down the road where you're holding the purse strings. But it's a swamp. I want to know what heroes we've got in this party that are prepared to stand up and literally win over Democrats. I mean, we're not sitting here as Republicans on our own paying taxes. The Democrats pay taxes. There's Democrats that are more wealthy than us, and there's Democrats that are poorer than us. I can't accept that if we had a hero stood up and said, boom, national security, boom, support the police, boom, fight sanctuary cities,
you'd be absolutely staggered how many people we would win over. But no one's doing it. They're getting very complacent in the swamp. And we need some heroes to lift out and win people over to take us into a controlling position.
Sure, Alan, no, I appreciate your comments.
I don't see those heroes.
Well, two things. One, and again, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm trying to paint a realistic picture. More often than not, I'll get an email, what are we going to do about this? And again, you have to understand the reality of the situation we're in right now, okay? And I totally agree with you. And I'll walk through fire for any one of the members in my caucus. Absolutely. You want to ask for a hero? I'll show you 41 of them. And every day they take their lumps, they take the beatings, every day. And I would look back to 2 years ago when we convinced Democrats to go and get the charter schools done. For one moment, we had control of the floor because I think we had 3 Democrats join with us on charter schools. So are we able to do it? Yeah, absolutely. But you're not going to see that in the media. But I am going to paint a realistic picture of what we're up against. And it goes back to the elections. It is not enough to do what we've done. We have to do things differently.
We need some heroes. We need a strategy
Sure.
for winning. We're not winning. We're swimming against a stronger tide than we can cope with.
Well, yeah, you brought up some national issues in there as well, and I'll say this, the president, there's a lot of great things that he's done. He's got a unique communication style, which, frustrates the media. But, for every new regulation that's been in this administration, 6 have been repealed. I think that's a huge positive. We have great things going on at that level. But we also have to live with the reality of what the numbers are. I can't magically make Democrats come to my side. I've got to get independents. And that's where the battle is. You look at any given election, you have a third that are going to vote Democrat, a third that are going to vote Republican, and you have a third that are independent. And typically, out of that third that are independent, a third lean to the left, a third lean to the right. It leaves us a third of a third. 1/9. But we can overcome that. And I've had dinner with Rob McKenna, a couple years after, his race, and asked the question point blank, what went wrong? I mean, he was honest with it. We have not done a great job running statewide campaigns, but we have won. And I look at Dwayne Davidson as a hero. Won the treasurer's seat. Kim Wyman, against great obstacles in 2016, won re-election. We have started to pick these things up, and we need to pick off a few more of these at the executive level. And that'll begin to really turn the tide in the state as well, because the way our executive branch is, it's very weak. So I want to win the governorship, absolutely. But if we get a couple more of these, we really start to change how things are done. The insurance commissioner, we have the ability to do it. But again, I have to work with the reality of what we have right now and work towards those goals. And I believe we can do it, absolutely.
Just an observation, if we could go back to housing.
Yeah.
In the early 2000s, there was a study done at all places at the University of Washington. I can't remember the professor's name. They come to the conclusion that 50% of the cost of housing in every major city, they did 200 cities in the United States, Seattle included, half of the cost of housing was directly attributable to government regulations and rules. And I can't remember the name of that study. If I'd known you're going to talk about that, I would have.
I have heard of that study as well. And
it's got a
absolutely
and ammunition in for it.
Yep. Anybody else?
Drew, I appreciate you coming, and just know that you're someone that, when the rubber meets the road and it's time to vote, that we can count on your vote for certain issues. In the 35th District, we've lost the Shelton Rifle and Pistol Club.
Yeah.
In the 35th District, we've lost other range facilities. The Kingston Junior Marksman Range is gone forever. The Sheridan Park Center Range is gone forever. Kitsap Rifle Revolver Club now has been sued twice by Kitsap County. And I know that we checked to see if the 35th District representatives, including Senator Sheldon, who's also been very friendly to firearms owners and Second Amendment rights, has ever put anything in writing supporting Kitsap Rifle Revolver Club or asking the AG if the local counties have overstepped their bounds on state preemption and issues of that nature. And we just haven't seen anything there. And as the one gentleman brought up, you know, I know folks I talk to say, well, what are they doing for us? You tell us that Republicans are the ones we need to vote for, but I've not seen their name out there on this issue. And on this issue, this is, as our framers called it, the liberty teeth. That gives us something to hold on to. And the article just came out here, even the shoe fly pit and others in the 35th district are being shut down to shooting.
I know, and Sheldon and I are working on legislation on that, and it's and we're with you. If I feel like we haven't done enough, let me know what more we can do. And I know after I was first elected, you and I sat down and we got ecology to come around on some things. I mean, it didn't stop the full train, but yeah, I certainly worked on that, and I'd be happy to again. You know, let me know what we can do. And oftentimes we get asked, what can we do when something's already down the judicial train? And we're kind of out then. We're fighting with the DNR on that issue with the shoe pit. I'm meeting with the lands commissioner, I think it's tomorrow actually, or it's this week at some point, on that and a number of other issues, some of them lands rights issues. So, you know, we do. If it's not visual enough, I apologize for that. You know, I'll be happy to show, you know, more of that, however you'd like me to do that. But, you know that we are there. And, you know, we're going to lose some battles. I'm not conceding anything, but, you know, we will fight everywhere that we possibly can. And, you know, and just, you know, Alan unfortunately walked out because, again, you know, you look at these some of the things that we have flipped. And this isn't about me, but in 2012, I mean, I was the first one to win that seat since 1932. Griffey won in 2014. It's the first time since 1934 we had 2 Republicans in that district. You know, but it doesn't. But we got to look at this whole map, and that's the point I'm driving home. And I'm fully with you. And if there's something more you need me to do, be more public about something, I'm happy to. Let me know what it is.
You mentioned the need for more candidates and winning. It's been my observation over 40 years that the only reason why you won is because you're a strong candidate. The only reason why Dan Griffey won is because he's a strong candidate. The only reason why Tim Sheldon won is because he plays to his constituencies. What we need is candidates that put their name on the line, that stick to the Republican conservative platform. And they don't do it, they get waffling. And the minute they get waffling, they lose their base. They not only lose their base, they lose the independents. So you need the strong candidates.
Amen. Thanks.
So what I want to know is there any conversation behind the scenes about their building a supermajority, the Democrats? And are you all worried about it? And who's going to run for governor in the next election in the Republican team?
Well, we're always, you know, looking at the next election. I mean, the moment one ends, we're looking at the next one. And so I'm working real hard on behalf of my caucus with GOPAC. And I've got to be careful here because when we're in session, we're frozen. I cannot talk. I can't ask for money. I can still ask you to vote for me, but I can't do anything campaign finance-wise. So, yeah, we are working hard not to fight off a supermajority, but to get to the majority. That's what we're working towards. You know, and again, I mean, after this next election, the lines are going to get redrawn. It's going to be a whole new board. So, it's imperative that we pick up as much as we can in this next election cycle. As to who's running for governor, I don't know. I really don't know. Anything I throw out there is total speculation. I don't know. So, and it's good, but it's going to be interesting, and this could be an opportunity for us on the Republican side, is because assuming that Inslee can run for a 3rd term, we don't have term limits in this state, even though it's been tradition that you do 2 terms as governor and move on. He could decide, if he doesn't get traction on the national level, to run for a 3rd term. Barring that, if he doesn't, it's a positive because you've got some prominent Democrats all vying for governor. And that's the Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, the Lands Commissioner, Hillary Franz, Lieutenant Governor Cyrus Habib, and King County Executive Dow Constantine. But, so forget Dow for a second, because that doesn't impact anything in Olympia. But if you have vacancies in the Lieutenant Governor and the Lands Commissioner and the Attorney General, again, I want a strong candidate for governor, but we need to have strong candidates in those open seats, and to capture one of those would be fantastic. So.
Yeah, Drew, we talked a lot about voting and candidates and voting people out of office, and you just mentioned Sonship Bob. If I recall, in 2016, the Republican Party didn't put up a candidate against for Attorney General. It was one poor libertarian guy driving around that had like $10,000 to his name. That was the only person that was opposing Bob Ferguson. There were a number of legislative seats that were the only opposition was some libertarian. If we don't run candidates, we can't win the offices. And the second part is, with everything we do to quote-unquote encourage voting, I mean, for God's sake, you don't even have to put a stamp on the ballot anymore, we still have like a 50.1% turnout of eligible voters. How in the devil do we combat that? When I was a kid, it was a big thing. You voted, it was a big deal. Oh my gosh, it was something that you went out, you went to your polling place, you showed your ID, they checked your name off, they said, Mr. or Ms. So-and-so has just voted. We don't do that. If somebody takes their ballot and they throw it, God only knows where. Is there any way at all we can combat this idea that this whole motor voter mail-in ballot thing was a good idea, because it's really not doing that great of a job at increasing voter turnout?
Back to the Attorney General question first. Yeah, that's an embarrassment that we didn't have a candidate. And this is a struggle that we have on the judicial side, the Supreme Court justices as well. Any self-respecting, good Republican attorney typically does not want to be on the Supreme Court or be Attorney General because they're very successful in their own right, and they look at that as a demotion. So we have that we're fighting against. But, and I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's true. It is hard to recruit for a number of reasons, Republican attorneys for those for the judicial side of things and the Attorney General's office, and that is something that we need to do a much better job at in getting credible people to run. You know, and I mean, again, Rob McKenna proved that can be done, you know, when he won in 04. So, you know, we certainly can do it. And then to voter turnout, I don't know if you're looking at a county stat, statewide, it was closer to 70%. And I think in my district overall, it's about 75%. So I have issues with the mail-in ballot. I certainly do. You know, I think it opens up a lot of possibilities to various activities. And, I don't know that there's a political will to change that system right now. So, you know, we actually had a meeting with Secretary of State Kim Wyman today. He talked about a number of issues involved with mail-in ballots, and some of it, it's tough because some of the issues that we see, we don't want to fix through legislation, because if we fail in getting the legislation through, we're showing the other side the problems that we see, and we don't want to let them exploit those. So there are fixes that are trying to be enacted that you might not see, you know, in the media. But I share your concerns on the mail-in ballot, absolutely. You know, we've gone to the system where we're voting 3 weeks before the election day, and there's pros and cons to that too. You know, turnout though, and I'll tell you, you know, again, going back to the whole election deal, if we want to really change things, we gotta get the youth. Because how somebody will vote in their first presidential election, they will maintain that party for the propensity is something like 70%. So in their first presidential election, if they vote Democrat, 70% of the time, that's the party they're going to stay with for the majority of their life. And if we can get them to vote Republican, the same works in our favor. So I think that's something as a party we really need to focus on, is getting to our youth, because those can sway an election. It certainly did in 2008. You know, Obama had galvanized the youth movement, and it was a factor. And you know, I think it's good sometimes to read the other side's war stories, and it's an interesting read. You know, and he doesn't go into a lot of the politics, but and I got a mental blank on his name. He was Obama's campaign manager in 08, but the book he wrote was The Audacity to Win. And it's very interesting if you read the book, because I think there's, again, you got to be able to read the other side's strategy and implement from them what worked. And that's one of the reasons Trump won, because he was the first candidate who didn't have a machine already. Most of our, you know, on both sides of the aisle, most people, when they get to that level and they get the nomination of their party, you know, they've been a senator or a governor and they've got this machine. They don't want the RNC's database. Like, no, that's nice, but we're going to use our system. Trump was the first guy that got there, and he's like, what the hell do we do? What do you guys have? And the RMC for the last 15 years put a lot of effort in data modeling. It was one of the big reasons that Trump won. We knew where to target. And, you know, and that's, so I point that out as a big positive with, it was a game changer. And, but going back to what the book I mentioned on Obama's campaign manager, they were scared. McCain had them until the last week and a half. They were scared. They didn't, and it was their data modeling that got them there. So, you know, all the wins that McCain was up against in 08, there was a path to victory. We just didn't have the data, and they did. So, when you look at elections like that, keep in mind there is a path. We just got to know where to look.
We're going to actually just take one more question tonight, and you've been waiting patiently over here.
Thank you. In terms of increasing turnout, giving people a choice other than the two parties, what about ranked choice voting, like was done in Maine? Is that any discussion of that in the Republican caucus?
No, I don't think the majority of us are in favor of that. I think it would hurt us. So yeah, has it been discussed? Yeah, we don't like it. I don't think we would fare well. And ranked voting is, okay, here's my first choice, but if that person doesn't win, here's my second choice. And that person can end up being the winner without a majority of the vote. And I think that would not fare well for us in a lot of races. So,
ladies and gentlemen, a great hand for a great representative. Okay, so you know he's going to be doing a lot of signing on our behalf, right? Right? And so we want you to pick some, and sign this and give it to the governor. Sign something and give that to the governor. Thank you very much. So, great night, a good first meeting. Did you like the talk we had tonight? Was that good? Next month we have something coming up on 2A issues, and I'm not going to go into detail because frankly I don't know them all, but it's going to be super. I expect all of the gun club, Marcus, I know you're listening, you're not falling asleep on me back there. I want to see the gun club here because we're going to have a dynamic, innovative speaker that I don't think we've had up in this part of the peninsula before. So any last second must-say announcements? Good? Everybody, thank you for being here. Happy New Year. Drive safe. God bless you all. And don't forget these absolutely phenomenally designed little envelopes that we want you to give generously to. Thank you.
Oh,